everybody. We are back here at Diving Deep, and we are continuing to dive deep in the book of Numbers. We've been deep for quite a while, but we're getting into the home stretch. Not quite there yet, but we're getting there. All right. We are in chapter 29, and we are looking over the list of sacrifices for the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? This is an 8th-day celebration. Now, unlike the other feasts, where one set of sacrifices are offered up, in addition to the daily offerings and the weekly Sabbath offerings, as well as the monthly offerings, this particular feast has a list of sacrifices offered up each day. For 7 days, 2 rams and 14 lambs are offered up every day for 7 days. So that's a total of 14 rams, and let me see, 14 times 7, that's 98 total lambs sacrificed during that week. There are also bulls. But as you'll notice, the number of bulls sacrificed decreases with each day. Okay, on the first day, 13 are sacrificed. On the second day, 12. On the third day, 11. On the fourth day, 10. On the fifth day, 9 bulls. On the sixth day, 8 bulls. And then finally, on the 7th day, 7 bulls. Okay. And then we get down to the 8th day, in verse 35. On the 8th day you shall do a sacred assembly. You shall do no customary work. You shall present a burnt offering made by fire as a sweet aroma, 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 lambs in their first year, and their grain offering, and their drink offerings for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs, by the number according to the ordinance. Also 1 goat offering as a sin offering, besides the regular burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Okay. As I said before, you can with each day the number of bulls sacrificed decreases. All right. It's believed that the reason for this is to show symbolically the eventual end of animal sacrifices. Okay, at least one's for sin. In any case, okay. Okay, verse 39. Then you shall present to the Lord at your appointed feasts, beside your vowed offerings and your free will offerings. Now, did you catch that? Free will offerings. Now, what's being listed right here is the bare minimum of offerings that Israel is supposed to offer up to God. There are also free will offerings, where offerings made not out of any obligation, not out of any kind of law, but out of love, out of worship, for whatever reason you wish to offer them. Okay, so you don't have to do just this. Okay, now we go to chapter 30, the law concerning vows. Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Now, the key word here is in verse 2. It says, if a man makes a vow to the Lord. Vows are completely 100% voluntary. There is no law obligating any man to make a vow to the Lord. nor will the Lord ever try to coerce a man into making a vow. It's 100% his choice. But if he chooses to do it, he is then obligated to keep it. Obligated to keep it. Yes. Case in point, in the book of Joshua, Joshua is out conquering, conquering the cities and killing off the inhabitants there. One of the tribes there, I forget their name, but they hear about what Joshua's doing, so they present themselves as being from a faraway land, and ask the Israelites to make a peace treaty with them, that they'll become their slaves, just that they won't kill them off. And without consulting the Lord, they agree to do so. They later find out that they are not from a faraway land. They're occupants in the promised land, which they were supposed to eliminate. Now, yes, they were deceived into making this treaty, but at the same time they gave their word, and Joshua said, we must honor our word. We can't break it, even though we were supposed to wipe them off. Okay. So Joshua understood the seriousness of honoring a vow, keeping your word. All right. And as it says, do according to all that proceeds that comes out of his mouth. So they had to watch their words. They had to be very careful with what they vowed to do. Because if they couldn't keep the vow, then it's a serious, serious problem. Then verse 3, or if a woman makes a vow to the Lord and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father holds his peace, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement which she has been bound herself shall stand. Okay. So, same sort of thing, with a man. If a man makes a vow, he is bound to it. Now, if a woman makes a vow, and her father hears of the vow, but says nothing, then she is obligated to keep it just like the man. But now let's look at this. But if her father overrules her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she is bound shall stand, and the Lord will release her because her father overruled her. So, if a woman makes a vow in the presence of her father, and her father doesn't agree with it, and he overrules the vow, then the vow is canceled. She is no longer obligated to keep that vow. Okay? And then go down further in verse 6, if indeed she takes a husband while bound by her vows, or by a rash utterance from her lips, by which she bound herself. Oh, listen to that. A rash utterance. You just, when you say something without thinking about it, you're still bound by those words. Let that sink in of just how God seriously takes words that you speak. We sometimes engage in something called useless talk, jibber jabber. I would say that God hates just jabbering, and nonstop talking. Words apparently carry power, and just to use words flippantly like that is wrong in God's eyes. I mean, for one thing, we're doing it in utter ignorance of the power of words, but that's a whole different message. All right. Continuing on. And her husband hears it and makes no response to her on the day that he hears, then her vow shall stand, and her agreements by she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband overrules her on that day that he hears it, he shall make void her vow which she took, and what she uttered with her lips, by which she bound herself, and the Lord will release her. All right. Now, what this is illustrating is that a woman is she is under the covering of either her father or her husband. And yeah, the man is seen as the head of the household, and therefore is the protector of the woman, of either the daughter or the wife. And because of that, he can the wife, the daughter or the wife has like extra protection in case she does something foolish. The father or the husband can cancel what she said. All right. When it talks about how the man is head of the household, it means that the wife is under his covering. That doesn't mean he's superior to the wife, no, or that he's a dictator or a tyrant. No, he's just simply the one who has. He's the one who has the covering in the household. And when a man does not take the responsibility of head of the household or spiritual leader, then there's no covering. Why? Because that's how God designed it. And if you don't do it the way God designed it, there are no benefits to it. All right, it's very important to keep that in mind. All right. Continuing on, verse 9. Also, any vow of a widow or a divorced woman by which she has bound herself shall stand against her. A widow has no man of the house under which she has a covering. Same thing with a divorced woman. So she is therefore bound by whatever vows she said, by whatever words that she says. Okay. 10. If she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it and made no response to her, and did not overrule her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband truly made them void on the day she heard them, then whatever proceeded from her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the agreement binding her, it shall not stand. Her husband has made them void, and the Lord will release her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her soul, her husband may confirm it, or her husband may make it void. Now, if her husband makes no response whatever to her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows or all the agreements that bind her, and he confirms them, because he made no response to her on the day that he heard them. But if he does make them void after he has heard them, then he shall bear her guilt. These are the statutes by which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, and between a father and his daughter in her youth in her father's house. Okay. So, and in that last part, it's just saying, if a husband hears what a woman says, and he does not overrule her, then the vows stand. And if the woman does not keep her vows, well, then he has to bear a burden too, because he didn't overrule it when he had the chance to. Okay. And again, this shows the importance of how a husband, a man, needs to be strong. He needs to be spiritually strong. A man needs to understand his responsibility, his obligation to being a husband, and that is to be the head of the household, the spiritual leader. And so women, if you're not married but want to, make sure you marry a strong man who's spiritually strong. and is ready to take on the responsibility of being the spiritual leader. And men, understand your obligation as head of the household. Don't attach yourself to a woman who's dominant and take charge and wants to put you beneath her, because then the household is all out of whack. Yes. Chapter 31. Vengeance on the Midianites. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take vengeance on the Midianites. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Take vengeance on the Midianites for the children of Israel. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, arm some of yourselves for war, and let them go against the Midianites to take vengeance for the Lord on Midian. 1,000 from each tribe, from all the tribes of Israel, you shall send to war. Okay. Now for those who are wondering why why vengeance is being taken on the Midianites for the Lord, well, you go back a few chapters when the men of Israel fell into sexual sin because of the Midianite women. The Midianites were allies of Moab, and most likely this plan was set forth by Balaam himself. To make God curse Israel without having to speak a curse over Israel. Yes. Yes, the Midianites have not been held accountable for those actions, but now they are. That's what's happening here. So there were recruited from divisions of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed for war. Now, this is an army of 12,000 men. Now, if you go back to the census, the number that was a military census. The number of men available to war were like in the hundreds of thousands, but only 12,000 are being called forth to wage war against the Midianites. Why? Well, God is about to display His strength in their weakness. Gideon, he went in with an army of 300 to take on an army of many, many thousands. And they emerged victorious because God showed His strength in their weakness. He wants Israel, and really any nation that hears about this, to know the power of His power. So that's why very few men are being sent in for this war. Okay. Verse 6, then Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe. He sent them to the war with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, with the holy articles and the signal trumpets in his hand. Oh, did you catch that, a trumpet? Gideon had a trumpet too. Okay. And they warred against the Midianites just as the Lord commanded Moses, and they killed all the males. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of those who were killed, Evi, Rekam, Zur, Hur, and Reba. The 5 kings of Midian, Balaam, the son of Beor, they also killed with a sword. Balaam meets his death at the hands of the Israelites. Balaam, I believe, was chosen to be a prophet of the Lord, but instead he chose money over the Lord, and he wound up aligning himself with the enemies of God, and this is what happened to him: death. In the end, Balaam got his just desserts. So we got to be very, very careful with whom we align ourselves with. We choose to align ourselves and be friends with with folks that that are enemies of God or against God, then we could perish right along with them. It's very important to remember that. We have to choose our company wisely. And the children of Israel took the women of Midian captive with their little ones, and took as spoil all their cattle, all their flocks, and all their goods. They also burned with fire all the cities where they dwelt, and all their forts, and they took the spoil of all the booty of man and beast. Now, something else to understand, the Midianites were a nomadic people. You know, they didn't have a land. They just traveled wherever. So there was no land to be gained in this conquest. This was a holy war, done solely for the purpose of vengeance for the Lord. Okay. Verse 12. Then they brought the captives, the booty, and the spoil to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of the children of Israel, to the camp in the plains of Moab by the Jordan, across from Jericho. And Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was angry with the officers of the army, with the captains over thousands and captains over hundreds, who had come from battle. And Moses said to them, "Have you kept all the women alive? Look, these women caused the children of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to trespass against the Lord in the instant of Peor." Okay, did you hear right there? Moses says, under the counsel of Balaam. More or less a confirmation that the Midianite women leading the men into sin was Balaam's idea. Okay. And there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, kill all the male children, the boys, and kill every woman who has known a man intimately, but keep alive for yourselves all the young girls who have not known a man intimately. As for you, remain outside the camp 7 days. Whoever has killed any person and whomever has touched any slain, purify yourselves and your captives. On the 3rd day and on the 7th day, purify every garment, everything made of leather, everything woven of goat's hair, and everything made of wood. Okay, so God is ordering the death of every Midianite woman who is not a virgin, who has had sex. In other words, any woman who could have caused these men to fall into sexual sin is now going to be slaughtered. Sounds extreme. I mean, these are women. You know, they're not soldiers. But, you know, this is how much God hates sin. You know, and his desire to eradicate it. And the fact that he's having these women killed shows you how much he hates sexual sin. You know, sex is not something we should have a casual attitude about. It's sacred. It's a creation of God. Yes. You know, and sex must be revered and only performed among the guidelines that God sets about. Okay. Then Eleazar the priest said to the men of war who have gone into the battle, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord commanded Moses. Only the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, the tin, and the lead, everything that you can endure fire, you shall put through the fire, and it shall be clean, and it shall be purified with the water of purification. But all that cannot endure fire you shall put through water. And you shall wash your clothes on the seventh day and be clean. Afterwards you may come into the camp. So, these are the laws of purification that are being observed. We went through them earlier, in the book of Numbers. Defilement caused by death, and the need to purify not just oneself, but also the clothing, that was involved. So Moses, he's faithfully observing the laws of purification as he was commanded to do. Okay. Verse 25. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, count up the plunder that was taken of man and beast, you and Eleazar the priest, and the chief fathers of the congregation, and divide the plunder into two parts between those who took part in the war, who went out to battle, and all the congregation. And levy a tribute for the Lord on the men of war who went out to battle. One of every 500 of the persons, the cattle, the donkey, and the sheep. Take it from their half, and give it to Eleazar the priest as a heave offering to the Lord. And from the children of Israel's half, you shall take one of every 50 drawn from the persons, the cattle, the donkeys, and the sheep, and from all the livestock, and give them to the Levites who keep charge of the tabernacle of the Lord. So Moses and Eleazar, the priest, did as the Lord commanded. The booty remaining from the plunder, which the men of war have taken, was 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 persons in all, of women who had not known a man intimately. Now, do you see this? This is like replenishment of livestock from all those sacrifices that Israel should have been keeping. Of course, considering all the harsh things that befell them, the judgments and the exile, it stands to reason that they didn't keep all those sacrifices, particularly maybe the Feast of Tabernacles. Yeah, maybe perhaps they lost faith in when they just realized how many animals would have to be sacrificed in addition to everything else. I don't know. I mean, that's just a guess. But again, this shows how God can provide. All right. Let's see. Where am I? Okay. Let's see. And half the portion of the war. Okay. The cattle were 36,000, of which the Lord's tribute was 72. The donkeys were 30,500, of which the Lord's tribute was 61. The persons were 16,000, of which the Lord's tribute was 32 persons. And that is all the time we have, and we shall continue next time. Until then.